Oh, my girl counting bad. My girl fixing her own order.
The fuck I am.
All right.
Fuck me talking about some fucking weight, bitch. No. You don't give me my motherfucking shit. And I'm taking a fucking ass. You got me fucked up. Around this bitch. Girl. It ain't working. Got me fucked up.
So guys, I want to do another black fatigue video, and I was watching this video online. It was posted like a while back, and it's of this woman who goes to a fried chicken shop, and what happens is that she gets impatient, and I believe the backstory was that she waited around like 15-20 minutes and they were just moving slow, so she gets mad and she goes around to where the food's being served, and she serves herself and she walks out, and we don't know if she paid for her food or not. And that's the end of the video. But it's also a little disturbing because she has her kid back there. So first of all, it's kind of a bad video because, you know, there's two things about it. That obviously she's stealing, and she's stealing fried chicken because obviously there's a stereotype that black people love fried chicken and bad food. And for those who don't know that, I went to Greensboro, North Carolina, and they had like... I went to a museum, and they did talk about a lot of the origin of black stereotypes. And the fried chicken stereotype comes from a few origin stories that, you know, after the slavery era, a lot of black people were, you know, like starving really. So what they did was that they got chickens because chickens were a very like easy, you know, animal to grow, and they produce a lot of food. You know, they have eggs, you know, you kill it, you know, you produce, you know, chicken from that. So, you know, it was almost like saying that black people were resourceful by, you know, by breeding and growing and eating on chicken, really. And then eventually, you know, people were like, okay, you know what, since black people are doing well for themselves, let's turn that into a negative stereotype and saying they love fried chicken. And then what happened was there was a film called Birth of a Nation, which inspired people to join the Ku Klux Klan. Like the Ku Klux Klan had over 20 million members in the 1920s because of Birth of a Nation. But one of the things that they showed in the film was a bunch of white people in blackface, you know, munching on fried chicken. So that's almost the origin of the fried chicken stereotype. And then also, as we kind of know, that really when you see a lot of advertisements or television shows, you can look at stuff like Family Matters or Fat Albert. Usually there's a bunch of black people eating unhealthy, you know, or even if you look at Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like Uncle Phil eats unhealthy. So that's always been like, you know, stereotypes of the black community that black people love bad food, really. They can't control themselves. So, you know, because when you have those stereotypes, it does two things. It encourages other black people to be impressionable and be like, hey, you know what? That's black culture. Like soul food is, you know, pork, ribs, it's fried chicken, it's Kool-Aid, it's grape soda, it's high sugar drinks, it's like, it's orange juice, not orange, no, it's orange drink, not orange juice, and other things like that. So definitely media perpetuates the stereotypes, you know, to also encourage people to have poor diets, really. Because that way, if you have a poor diet, what's going to happen? You're going to end up in a hospital, and you're going to bankrupt your family, really. You're not going to have generational wealth, really. If you're like in the movie, I think it's called Friday or whatever, if I'm correct, you know, the one where that woman like cooks for her family and then she gets diabetes and all that stuff. So that's kind of why those stereotypes exist, really, just to encourage black people to continue a pattern of bad diets and poor health. So that way, you know, at a certain point they end up in hospitals and, you know, they make money off of people like that. But also too, it stems from, you know, other like very bad racist stereotypes about black people, which is they're impulsive is a stereotype. And when you see views like this, it shows impulsive issues, you know, like, oh, well, this black woman can't control, you know, her fried chicken craving, you know, and people don't understand that this is probably more a response to bad customer service. And I do want to mention that on the side of other races, that I remember going to, I remember like, you know, I used to live in Guilford, Connecticut, mostly white community. And what happened was that, you know, my grandmother was like in her 70s. So sometimes what my dad would do is take us to Wendy's, and then we would eat on the beach and stuff like that afterwards. But what happened was that they had a person who had mental retardation make the burgers at that Wendy's. So every single time we ordered burgers, you ordered a triple cheeseburger, you'd get one patty burger. If you ordered a burger, sometimes there would be no, like, you know, patty on it or whatever. So I remember like my dad getting frustrated and going back one day because he was just really, really mad. And then it's also kind of like what we talked about. It doesn't matter if the person has an intellectual disability, you have to make the food right, really. I remember one time I went to one time there was a place called Rick's on Fives in Wallingford, Connecticut, and I was just really, really hungry, and I was just and I didn't sleep, so I was a little excited. I was very talkative, and I remember like doing things like ordering spaghetti and meatballs. I also remember ordering like a sundae. I remember like talking to the waiter and waitress and saying that, oh, I want this to be made a certain way, and she kind of got my food wrong, and I didn't leave her a tip because she called me special. But there's a stereotype that black people don't tip, or black people are very entitled when they go to restaurants. Like, honestly, like my emotions were a little off that day. But also, too, that when you have a waitress call somebody special, that's almost like a PG. How should I say this? That's like a we all understand that. That's the same as calling somebody retarded, but not as mean. That's almost like if I went to a what's the word? That's almost like someone called me a queer when I'm not gay. I'm a gay at all, but it's like saying queer instead of fag, or thug instead of nigger, type of thing. Really, it's just not okay, really. But there are times when I've not been happy with customer service, or I know relatives that are white in my family that have not been happy with customer service. So I totally get being impatient or expecting a lot, or sometimes you're hungry and you want something, or sometimes you want things done a certain way. I totally get that. But I also understand too that sometimes, there are people at their jobs that just don't care that they're at work, and they just don't give a shit. Like, for example, I remember going to Walmart in Hamden, and a lot of times when I needed something at that store, a lot of them would say, go to the back and talk to the people at the back of the store. And then the people in the back of the store are saying, hey, no, it's people up front to do it. And I remember getting so mad that I called Walmart, and I was like, hey, you know what? I called the headquarters in Arkansas. And I was like, hey, this is what's going on. I was going to spend a few $100s there because I didn't like that I was being manipulated, and that there's a bunch of lazy employees in the front of the store, really. Like, I got my revenge that way. Because, and then after that, they started to change around the store, really. They started to say, okay, everybody has to do their job, really. If it's customer service, you have to do customer service. It's not, oh, well, you throw on somebody else, or, oh, well, that's not my department. If it's your job, you do it. Like, I work at a hospital. It's the same exact thing. If I do something, if I clean a room incorrectly, they'll send me back, really, because everybody demands good customer service. That if that's your job, really. But we also have to know how to respect people who work in customer service. We also have to understand how to have patience, really. In this video, this woman had no patience. Like, she goes back there, serves herself fried chicken, and like I said, a bunch of people can watch this video and say, "Oh, this is this is the black woman. This is the being like a bad mother and irresponsible mother, using profanity, putting her child in danger." And I'll talk about it in a minute, and serving herself fried chicken, because blacks love fried chicken. That's why she's doing that when she's experiencing bad customer service. You have to know how to respond and be patient. And sometimes you just got to say, hey, you know what? If you don't serve me in like 5 minutes, I'm walking out. I don't care if I paid for it or not, but I will call corporate. That's what you do. That's the right thing to do. But the other thing too is serving yourself. Obviously you don't know if she paid for it or not. That's one thing. The next thing is that it's child endangerment, because what she doesn't realize, there's health code and child endangerment. So what she doesn't realize is, number one, when when customers go serve themselves, really, at restaurants or other places when they're not supposed to, one can argue that that's contamination of food. Like, obviously she served herself fried chicken, but somebody can say, hey, you're not an employee. You didn't follow protocol. You probably didn't wear an apron or whatever, really. So automatically you contaminated all that food. And in some places, food contamination can be considered that. Somebody who's not supposed to be in the kitchen goes into the kitchen. But that's really, really true. The other part of it is and then there's trespassing and other things, but the other part of it is child endangerment. Because what happens is that some people can say, hey, what would happen if somebody didn't mop the floor and she trips with the kid? Because sometimes, I've worked in restaurants, and Usually the floors can be really greasy or wet, or sometimes there could be a since it's a fried chicken place, there's a lot of like hot stoves and like ovens, and also like like fried chicken and fryer stations. So there's always like there's always hazards, really. Just bringing her kid into that environment where there's a bunch of hazards. So somebody could say, child endangerment. And this is kind of how, a bunch of people get themselves in trouble. Like, this may be a person who's fed up with waiting on their order, but they don't realize that being impulsive and doing that, it opens up other charges as well, really, or even like the removal of a child, really. And then also this adds to the stereotype black women being irresponsible with their children, because it's like, hey, you know what? I'm so impatient or I'm mad with customer service that I'm willing to take my kid and I'm going to go back there, serve myself fried chicken because it's taking forever. And then on top of that, I bring my kid along as well, really, because I have a kid with me, really. So, the best way to respond, just to reiterate, is just to say, hey, you know what? I'm in a hurry and I need this in like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And if I don't get it, I'm just going to leave and call corporate. And that's that, really. And I do understand that there's another side of, that type of thing, really, where sometimes you have to walk out on, if you knew at a restaurant, even if you pay for it already, sometimes you got to walk out if the customer service is not that good. Or I remember like one time I went to Barbaro's in Hamden and I waited an hour for my order. I remember like, right when I just was about to leave, they served my food and I still wanted to walk out because, just because the food was like an hour late. And I would say, hey, you know what, this was an hour late. And I'm not accepting that. Oh, or I remember like one time, there's a restaurant called Pizza Heaven in New Haven, and they had really great pizza, but the pizza that they had was really bad. It smelled like seafood. Like, honestly, a cheese pizza would smell like seafood. They had something where they had a container of pasta underneath the stove, and they would like take it from the container and just dump it on the stove, really, to heat it up, really. So they've kind of really just turned into really crappy service. But I could have done something like, be angry and ghetto and be like, hey, you know what the fuck, really? I'm paying all this money and you're giving me bad food. I'm gonna go in there and make my own pizza, or I'm gonna show you how it's done right, really, or I'm just gonna throw the pizza against a wall, make a mess, and walk out, really. And whatever, and vandalize, and not realize that vandalism. So like, as I said, the strongest people in the world always know how to check their emotions, and she didn't do that in this video.